Prince Harry didn't expect the delivery that showed up at his California home that morning. It was quiet outside. The kind of quiet you only get before the world wakes up. A small package sat on the doorstep. No grand labels, no royal crests. Just his name, handwritten. At first, he thought it might have been a gift from a friend or something Meghan had ordered, but as soon as he picked it up, something shifted. The way it was wrapped, the handwriting, it all felt intentional, old school, personal. He carried it inside, placed it on the table, and stood there for a minute. His fingers traced the edge of the box. There was a strange knot in his chest, like his body already knew this wasn't going to be just any delivery. Finally, he opened it. The first thing he saw was a photograph. Framed, simple, not even glossy. It was an old snapshot of him as a boy, laughing next to Prince Philip. There was something raw about it. No formal poses, no public faces, just a boy and his grandfather caught in a real warm moment. Harry smiled at first, but that smile faded quickly. He picked the frame up gently, ran his thumb across the glass, and felt a wave of emotion rise. Underneath the photo was a small wooden box. He opened it slowly, revealing a few personal keepsakes that clearly belonged to Prince Philip. A pair of cufflinks, slightly worn. A pocket knife, nothing flashy, just real things a man uses every day. They weren't expensive or rare, but they carried something heavier than price: memory. At the bottom of the wooden box was a note. Just a short, handwritten message. The paper was a little yellowed around the edges, like it had been tucked away for a while. The handwriting was unmistakable, Prince Philip's. It wasn't formal, but it was deliberate. Each word looked like it had been chosen with care. The note said the items had been selected by him personally. Some were meant for Harry, but some were meant for Archie. That part hit different. Harry just stared at the line for a while. He hadn't expected that. Archie was so young, too young to remember Philip, too young to understand the connection, but this gesture meant Philip had been thinking of him anyway. Across distance, time, and silence, Harry sat down slowly, rereading the note. A heaviness settled into his chest. It wasn't sadness, not entirely. It was more complicated than that. Regret, maybe. A longing for something he couldn't get back. And also gratitude. This silent message from the past, arriving exactly when he needed it. Then, just as he was about to put the note away, something else caught his eye. Tucked beneath the lining of the box was a small velvet pouch. It was light, but dense. He opened it carefully, expecting maybe a ring or pin. Instead, there was a watch. It was old, with scratches on the metal and a faint engraving on the back. Not Philip's name, but another name, one Harry didn't recognize. Generations back, maybe. It had clearly been passed down, and now it was here, not meant for Harry, meant for Archie. He turned the watch over and over in his hands, trying to imagine all the places it had been, the pockets it had sat in, the wars it had outlived, the homes it had traveled through. And now somehow it had ended up here, thousands of miles away, with a boy who hadn't even learned how to tell time. But that didn't matter, because time, real time, wasn't about minutes or hours. It was about connection. And this watch, this letter, this whole box, they were time frozen into something you could touch. Something Archie would one day understand, something Harry now had to carry. The watch sat on the table in front of him, catching a sliver of sunlight through the window. Harry couldn't take his eyes off it. He didn't know why it hit him so hard. Maybe it was because it had survived so much. And yet here it was, quietly waiting for a boy who didn't even know what it was yet. There was no need to wind it. It still ticked, soft and steady, like it was never meant to stop. Harry reached for the velvet pouch again just to feel its texture. He noticed something small stuck in the corner of it, a folded scrap of paper nearly hidden. It was thin, delicate. He carefully opened it, his breath hitching a bit when he saw the familiar handwriting once again. It wasn't a long message, just a few lines, but they landed with weight. It read, "To the one who comes after, let this remind you that time is earned, not given. Use it well." That was it. No signature, no instructions, just a quiet piece of advice carved from experience. Harry sat back, letting the words settle. They didn't tell him what to do, but they made him think about how he spent his time, about the future he was shaping for his son, and about the man who had left those words behind. He placed the paper back into the watch, folded carefully the way he found it, and returned it to the pouch. He didn't want to frame it or show it off. It wasn't about display, it was about intention, about protecting something that had meaning. Later that day, he walked into Archie's room. The toys were scattered across the floor, sunlight beamed in through the curtains, and the little boy was curled up on the rug, humming something to himself. Harry sat beside him, not saying anything for a while. Archie looked up and grinned, reaching for a nearby book. As they flipped through pages, Harry watched his son, his tiny fingers, his wide eyes, the way he tilted his head when something confused him. He wondered how he could ever explain all this one day. The letter, the watch, the handwritten note from a man Archie barely met. But maybe he didn't need to explain it all at once. Maybe it was something Archie would grow into bit by bit, just like the watch itself. That night, Harry couldn't sleep. He tossed in bed, eyes on the ceiling, thoughts spinning like clock hands. Megan stirred beside him but didn't say anything. She could tell he needed space. Eventually, he got up, walked into his study, and pulled open the drawer. The letter was still there, folded precisely the way he had left it. He took it out and read it again, slowly. There were no dramatic phrases, no big declarations, just truths. One line stood out this time: "Lead not with titles, but with grace." That was the line that broke him. He sat at the desk, holding the paper, breathing quietly. Everything they had been through, leaving the institution, building a new life, facing backlash, finding their footing, suddenly felt like it all pointed to this. He had wanted to do the right thing for his family. He had wanted to protect Archie, but in the process, he had closed parts of himself off. He had carried so much weight, trying to be strong, trying not to show when things hurt. Now, reading this letter under a desk lamp in the middle of the night, he felt all of it catch up to him. Not with noise, not with drama, just with clarity. This wasn't about running anymore. This was about building, about choosing what legacy to leave behind, not as a prince, but as a father. He sat there in silence, still holding the letter, when a thought struck him. Maybe it wasn't just about passing something down. Maybe it was about becoming someone worth passing it down from. That night, Harry picked up a notebook and began to write. Not for the public, not for the press, not even for Archie to read anytime soon, just for himself. He wrote about what the watch meant, what the letter stirred, what kind of man he hoped his son would become, and what kind of father he wanted to be remembered as. The words came slowly at first, but then faster, pouring out like they'd been waiting for permission. He wasn't writing rules or lessons, he was just writing truths, honest, unfiltered, messy truths about pain, about pride, about learning the hard way and still showing up. When he was done, he folded the pages and tucked them into the drawer next to the letter and the watch. It felt right to keep them together. Not because they were finished stories, but because they were part of something being built, something deeper than tradition, something more human. The next morning, Harry sat outside with Archie on his lap. Megan brought out breakfast, and they just sat there for a while, watching the wind move through the trees. Archie reached for Harry's hand, giggling at nothing in particular, and Harry thought, this is it. This is the moment that matters. Not the noise, not the cameras. This. Later that day, he made a decision. He pulled out his phone and typed out a short message to William. No pressure, no long explanation, just a thank you for the photo, for remembering the watch, for showing up in a quiet, important way. He didn't expect anything in return. That wasn't the point. But a few hours later, William replied. Nothing elaborate, just a line that read, he'd be proud. I think about that a lot. That was all it took. Something unspoken started to shift. Over the next few weeks, Harry began reaching out more often, not to repair everything overnight, but to show that the door was open, that he wasn't holding on to bitterness, that he was ready for something real, even if it took time. He also began writing to Archie more regularly. Not letters to give him right away, but things he planned to hand over when the time was right. Moments, thoughts, snapshots of what he was feeling as a father trying to navigate a complicated world. He didn't want Archie to wonder one day who he was or what he stood for. He wanted him to know. Megan saw the change too. Harry was lighter, not always smiling, but less burdened, more present. She never asked too many questions about the watch or the letter. She just made sure he had space to hold on to it in his own way. One afternoon, Harry brought Archie into his study and let him sit on his lap as he pulled open the drawer. He didn't hand over the letter or the watch, not yet, but he did show him the old photo, the one of him and Prince Philip laughing years ago. Archie studied it, his little fingers running across the glass. "That's you?" he asked. Harry nodded. "Yeah, and that's your great-grandfather." Archie smiled, looking curious but calm. He looked happy. "He was," Harry said, "and he wanted you to be happy too." They sat like that for a while. No rush to say anything else,